And we are live on the Metabolic Motivation Show, and very excited to be with Greg Carver today, who is a fitness expert and long-time health and fitness professional in Canada. So, Greg,
That's right.
welcome. And
thank you, Dan.
How can you tell us how did you get started in fitness? Has this been a lifelong thing, or did you have a transitional moment?
Oh, I had a transitional moment. It was not a lifelong thing. It's actually, when you describe me as a lifelong proponent, it's probably the opposite, because I had a lot of health challenges growing up and as even in my early adult years that I had to overcome. But it was kind of going through that adversity that led me to this discovery of what you can control in your own environment in terms of movement and nutrition can really change your life. But I was by no means a fit individual as a young adult, and certainly not as a kid.
Oh, that's, sometimes it's even better for a lot of our viewers who maybe have, sometimes have never really been into health and fitness, but would like to get started. And
sure.
Maybe you could tell us, share your, if you would, a short version of your story.
Well, okay, the short version of my story, yeah. I mean, basically, I think I just got a genetically poor deck to begin with, and that's one of the things that this taught me is that you can start with your genetics, but then you can overcome a lot through lifestyle changes.
Yes.
And so as a kid, I was just sick a lot. I had all these problems. I was never an athletic kid. I never felt like I was, the one that would play all the sports and stuff like that. And even when I was probably around, I don't know, late teens, early 20s, I started developing all these problems. Like I had 3 spontaneous lung collapses just out of the blue, not all at once, but those really knocked me for a loop, for months at a time. You go through the chest tubes, and I had 2 pleurectomies, one on each side, where basically they staple up the weak spots in your lungs and they stick them to the lung, to the lining of the chest cavity.
Right.
And you go through something like that, and it knocks you for a loop. I would have had 2 brothers, but they didn't even make it past being infants because of lung problems. So,
Wow.
There's a lot going on. I remember being hospitalized for everything from anemia to pneumonia to all these different things that just seemed to hit me. And then by the time, I kind of got out of that. Like by the time I hit my 30s, I started realizing that maybe fitness and health has something to do with this. So I started to make a change. The problem was, and I think a lot of your viewers can identify this, especially if they're in the same kind of age group, is that the information that we had available to us back then is very different from what's coming out now.
Yes.
So I was doing this, really low fat diet, and I'm going to run, and I'm going to, eat lots of complex carbs and all this kind of stuff. It's because that's what everyone was doing.
Sure.
And you know what, Dan, it actually worked for a bit because it's better than where I was. So I did get benefit out of it. But in the long term, that led to even more problems.
Yes.
So my God, by the time I got in my 40s, I started developing chronic inflammation.
Yes.
But I didn't know I had chronic inflammation. I just know that I was tired all the time. I know that my joints ached. I wasn't, I would get out of bed and I'd feel like I was 90 years old. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And so, they were trying to diagnose me with everything from lupus to fibromyalgia. And finally I said, you know what, I've had it. Like, I can't do this anymore. I can't take any more ibuprofen. I have to find a solution. So I went to see this guy. And maybe you know him. His name is Bryce Wild, and he's on Dr. Oz a lot now, so he's kind of become famous.
I know of him. Yeah, I know of him.
I went to see him, and he said, "Greg, your problem is in your gut." And I said, "No, it's not. My problem is in my knees hurt, and I feel tired. My problem's not." And he said, "No, it's in your gut. That's where we're going to start. It's inflammation."
Right.
So
you were dealing with the symptoms of the inflammation.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I got to tell you, just to wrap this up, he put me on, like, I had a good probiotic. He put me on fish oil, changed my diet. And I already thought I was eating pretty well, because most people, if you ask them, they say, I eat pretty well.
Sure.
But he put me on a pretty good anti-inflammatory diet. And you know what? Within 30 days, every symptom just disappeared. Like I felt like a new person. And
Wow,
then
good
it
for
was
you.
this, oh my gosh, I have this passion now. I have to tell people because I see the power of food and then later movement and exercise and fitness and what it can do for you is just absolutely amazing.
Yes, yes. The human body is amazing when you treat it the right way. But
Right.
you're so correct. And I've have seen so many people that we've been oftentimes given the incorrect information. And as you were saying, many times when you go from eating just a really poor processed food diet and you go to a cleaner diet that's low fat, high carb, people mostly do feel a little better initially, but then they start
Sure.
getting the inflammation and nutrient deficiencies, especially with the omega 3s and the lack of fat soluble vitamins. Did you
Right.
did you also notice any of that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I really increased my omega threes and the supplements he put me on, which I'm no longer on. But in the beginning, he said, Greg, you need these sort of therapeutic doses. I originally kind of resisted
Sure.
because I said, I don't want to do this supplement thing. And I looked at I mean, he wasn't selling them, but the cost of this was quite high. And I thought,
Yes.
my God. And then I told myself, Greg, if you don't do what this guy says, why are you bothering to see him? You should do what he says to the letter. And so that's what I did. And wow, what a difference.
Oh well, good for you. Good for you. So that led you then to to making this actually a profession for yourself.
I did because I was a corporate guy. I worked for a big telecommunications firm for many years. I was a director there, and I just decided, boy, I need a real change in my life, and I want to share this with people. And it when I was actually laid off from the firm, and that was, boy, the day I drove home, I had the biggest smile on my face, Dan, like you can't even imagine, because I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And
Right.
so I created a facility in Toronto called the Strength Box. And I wanted to, because I was into fitness and stuff like that, and I wanted to share my passion for moving naturally, primal movement patterns, all that kind of stuff, strength training, mobility, and be able to coach people. So I could kind of bring my loves together of fitness and health and also coaching people. And so that's kind of how the Strength Box in Toronto was created.
Wow, fantastic! Congratulations on that. So it
Thank
sounds
you.
like you're, getting laid off is actually could be a liberation.
Oh, it was life changing. It was just the best thing that could ever happen to me. You
That could
know,
be a product right there. Make your layoff into liberation and a life change or life changing liberation. We could play with the L's. That and you
absolutely.
could be the poster child.
Alliteration. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things you kind of dread when it happens because, or you dread it happening because people get, sucked into the kind of, the security of the corporate job and all, which is anything
Sure.
but secure. And we worry about saving for retirement and all these kind of things. And now my priorities have just shifted so much. And it makes me think that people put so much energy and effort into planning for the retirement, but only from a financial perspective. So they'll
Right.
hire a financial advisor, they'll talk to their banker, they'll do the RSPs, and they save up all this money and they work themselves to death doing it.
Yes.
And then the retirement comes, and if they can even take it, because I read an article yesterday on how a lot of people can't retire because of health reasons. So if you can even take the retirement, it often doesn't end up being what you thought it was going to be. People don't have passions outside of their job because they focused everything in their life into their job, so they don't know what the heck to do with themselves. And then B, they've worked themselves up into a state of disrepair and poor health that the money that they saved up ends up paying for the drugs and the doctor bills and everything just to make them healthy again.
Yes, so true. So true.
It's
Yeah,
kind of sad.
I think you really just hit the nail on the head. I see that so much myself. It's sort of like the programming that that many of us were given. That we're supposed
Yeah.
to. And I like to give credit when I can remember who I get ideas from. There is a New York writer and entrepreneur whose name was James Altucher. I'll touch or Altucher. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but
I'm not. No.
he has a very interesting book called Choose Yourself, and he really touches on this topic and touches on it well. How in the past, it was true that the whole corporate jobs, people did live their whole life with the corporate job. I mean, maybe your grandparents or your or my grandparents or parents. But our generation, we still have the remnants of that programming, that mental thing as part of our belief system. But that's gone, and we still have this retirement idea, and we give up our health to get wealth, we think, and then we give up our wealth to try to regain
the health. Absolutely. And it shouldn't be such a linear process. It seems like life, it's okay, first it's school and then it's work and then it's retirement. And I never quite understood that. I never understood why can't you just mix it all together? Why can't I learn right now? And whether it's going to school or studying something, why can't I have playtime now and active time now and also work now? Why does it have to be these sort of 3 blocks or 3 stages? Never really made sense to me.
Right.
So now I'm poor and happy, and that's a hell of a lot better, having the money and the security and just being stressed out all the time. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, quality of life. I mean, you're
absolutely,
totally,
absolutely.
Well, Greg, tell me, let's talk a bit about, if we could change gears, about the typical people. Maybe we mentioned a little bit in our emails the 40+ crowd.
Right.
That I know you deal a lot with. What are what would be the top 3 issues or problems or frustrations you see with the 40+ crowd, and then how do you deal with those?
Well, first of all, I think one of the biggest issues is just loss of mobility in that crowd, because people forget to work on the mobility, and mobility isn't necessarily a sexy thing. It's not something that if you're doing that, you tend not to Instagram it or put it on Facebook, like all of the crazy workout stuff. Frankly, sometimes it can be a little boring, but you gotta put in the work. It was Steve Maxwell, who is one of my mentors. He's a coach I think Steve is 61 or 62, an amazing guy. And he always says that, Greg, mobility, it's truly the keys to the fountain of youth.
Yes.
It's like there is nothing more. He says one of his quotes was he meets a lot of old people, and he said, I'll see people who are 70 and 80 years old, and they never say, gee, I wish I could had a bench press more, or gee, I wish I'd logged more hours on the elliptical machine. Yes. But they will say, gee, I wish I worked on my mobility. Because I see it all the time. I see people come into my facility, into the strength box, and they can't squat. Like a basic body weight squat just seems they don't even know what to do, because we spend all our lives sitting down in chairs, and we have computers and couches and cars and everything that begins with C. There's more alliteration for you.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. So
computers,
we never
cars, and couches. I like that.
Yeah, chairs. Yeah, Chesterfields if you're English. So we never get below parallel. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. Even I went into a plumbing supply store, or store where they sell bathroom fixtures, and they were trying to sell me a comfort height toilet seat, because it's all the rage now, because they're higher, so you don't have to squat as low. Like, wow. That's ridiculous.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. So people can't squat. That's basic human movement. It's basic human capacity.
Sure.
Have to be able to do it. I realized that God, I'm going to be 56 years old this year. I'm no spring chicken. So I have, my squat's gotten way, way better, but I have my own mobility challenges. I have poor thoracic mobility in the upper back. I have poor shoulder mobility. And for various reasons, I think, a lot of it has to do, congenitally and with the issues that I went through. But boy, I may not be a star at that mobility, but I make it a priority to spend every day working on it a little bit. And it doesn't have to be fancy. It's just learning to first of all, some joint mobility, what you have to do. And I don't care if it's 5 minutes, just, in the morning, it's a great thing to do.
Right. Oh yeah.
But so that's one of the things that I would say, mobility. The other thing is, as you get older, people got to get comfortable with getting on the floor again. It seems like we spend all our lives, as I said, on these chairs or standing up. And you don't see, if you look at older people, little kids are on the floor all the time. We're never on the floor. So learning some kind of ground engagement. I did a whole program recently on just getting up and down off the floor, why it can save your life, why it's so important. And I look at people, Dan, who are only in their 40s, and I'll say, ask them to get on the floor and get up again. And I look at the way that they get up, and it's a struggle.
Right.
And I think, wow, fast forward 20 years, fast forward 30 years, because that's going to happen. And what are they going to be? What are they going to be like? That's important to work on that simple stuff. It's not sexy, but it again, it's the key to the fountain of youth.
Yes. Wow. So powerful stuff. Very powerful stuff, and very, very true. Well, Greg, what about nutrition for someone who a beginner that comes to you, a 40
Yep.
something person who comes in, they're eating the standard American slash world processed food diet, because
Yeah.
I'm assuming in Canada you guys are not free of the corporate advertising influence of corporate food.
No, no, we fare a little better, like honestly, in terms of the food supply than the U.S., but still, like the multinationals and the advertising that you're exposed to, and because I, like yourself, I tend to surround myself and everything on my social media contacts and the people that come to the gym are fairly healthy, so it's kind of easy to get misled into thinking that people sort of know what they're doing, and then one trip to the grocery store just eradicates all that when you see what people are actually putting into their cart, and there's
Yes, I'm
nothing
with
but
you.
packaged goods. I'm like, what are you doing? It's crazy. So the first thing I tell people, I try not to overwhelm them.
Yes.
You know, like I'm a big fan of, like, you know, I've talked about the paleo diet and all this stuff, and I'm a big fan of that. I think it works, but you know, it's kind of baby steps when you're trying to change things. I think that there's a lot of power in changing one habit at a time. And so, you know, maybe it's just, you know, removing one thing out of your diet that's poor for you, like trying to reduce the amount of vegetable oil that you get in your diet. And maybe that's the first step. Trying to remove a processed food out of your diet and replace it with something more nutritious. So in the beginning, it's like, don't overcomplicate things. You just want to eat whole foods as much as possible, or at least minimally processed foods as much as possible. But I try not to be dogmatic about it.
Right.
It's one thing that actually led me, you know, as I said, I'm still a fan of the paleo diet, but it does drive me crazy when people get very dogmatic about it,
Yes.
or because they'll spend all their time trying to defend it and you know, posting this research which supports it, and then if there's research that comes along which may contradict it, then they'll say, oh, these people are idiots, they don't know what they're doing. And I think that's actually a bad position to be in. You want to be a little bit open and you want to experiment with your own diet. So I'm constantly experimenting with my diet. You know, when I go to I'm lucky enough. I mean, you're in Spain. I go to Greece every year and I enjoy it there. And it's taught me a lot about kind of being a little more relaxed about um, being dogmatic about diets. Because when I go to the Greek islands, man, they're not eating paleo. They're eating grains. They're eating legumes. You know, but these people are among they outlive everybody. They're living longer than anybody else on the planet. So who am I to come in and say, oh, your diet is not healthy? So
Right.
when I go to Greece, I eat like the Greeks do. I eat a traditional diet.
Sure. Yeah, it may be that the wheats are not that's some of the, aren't GMO, and that they're better things.
They're
But
not
but
they're
but I'm
not eating
with
a
you.
packaged whole wheat bread. They're not, you know, and the a lot of the stuff is sprouted or fermented. So it's not like the processed stuff that we get here. It's
Sure.
very, very different. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. In Spain, there's a big divide now among what young people who are typically more influenced by the advertising, and are going more toward fast food, processed foods, etc. But
Right.
with the economic problems in the last 4 or 5 years, people have been returning and spending more time with the grandmother.
Right.
And so you're seeing a little bit of. I'm seeing some of my friends saying, wow, it's not so bad eating, those that chickpea soup and lentil soup, three times a week or something.
Well, it's all relative to what else could you be. It's a hell of a lot better than eating processed food. You know,
Oh yeah,
it's certainly a step in the right direction. There's probably lots of good olive oil in there, which is full of antioxidants. So, you know, it's rich in fiber. So you can't really say that demonize the food because it
sure.
happens to be lentils. I don't, you know, some people are more sensitive to other things. I mean, I had to take all that stuff out of the diet to heal myself. Like I wasn't eating any grains and legumes, but that was for my particular case. So
Sure.
again, I'm a big proponent of paleo because I think it works. I've rarely given it to anybody and had it backfire on them. But I'm just saying one should be willing to experiment a little bit and not be
Right.
religious about things. That's all I'm saying. So
Yeah, that's a great point. Progress is more important than perfection.
right, exactly,
So
exactly.
wonderful.
And if I can just extend that, because you made me think when I said Greece, there's an island there called Icaria, and I go to Icaria a lot, and I've probably been there, I don't know, 10, 11 times, and I was lucky to be there twice last year. And those people, Dan, they there are more people in their 90s, and I mean their late 90s, that are very, very healthy individuals. They're not sitting around in rocking chairs and there's no old age home than anywhere else on the planet. And so it's a very interesting place to study longevity and to study what are the factors that cause them to lead long lives. And I think that's very important sort of for that baby boomer crowd and that 40-year-old plus crowd to take some of those factors and see what they can incorporate into their own lives.
Wow, that's fascinating stuff. Speaking of Greece, I know that you have an upcoming active vacation trip that you
I
offer
do.
to people.
I
Why don't
do.
you tell it? That's fascinating stuff. Tell us about that.
It's, we actually went to Icaria last year. As I said, I was there a couple of times and I had a group to Icaria. And so the website for these trips is travelsbynature.com. That's travels with an S. And basically it's a group that you can come from anywhere. We meet in Greece, and it's not a retreat in such that you're staying in one particular location. It's a bit of a holiday. So we're going to travel around to a couple of places, but this is not tourist Greece. This is not the Greece that you thought, if you're thinking of the little pretty white, blue and white houses in the Aegean Sea, that's not it, because that's Disneyland Greece.
Yes.
We are doing the real Greece, which means the villages where the real people live, right?
Sure.
And so in Icaria, the life is in the village, which is actually up on the mountains. And so we went there and we incorporated a bit of fitness every day. And you're not going to Greece to do burpees. So it's like, it's good fitness, but it's generally done in the morning before it gets too hot before breakfast.
Sure.
And then we're active during the day. So we do a lot of hiking because we're in rural areas too. We're in the mountains. So we hike quite a bit. I see you bill yourself as the worst Spanish dancer or something like that.
Yes.
So we
Yes,
get the
we-
world's worst. So we do Greek dancing because I teach it here in Toronto. And so another little known fact about Greg Carver. And so we do some Greek dancing and we go to the festivals. And these are not commercial events. These are village organized festivals that are just a tourist would never experience anything like that. We look at the foods that they eat. We had a cooking lesson using ingredients from the garden, that's right there. I mean, talk about organic. It's just, it's amazing stuff. So it's trying to get a whole Greek experience and of the real Greece, and at the same time see what health lessons that you can take and apply to your own lives. So
Wow.
that's the trip. Typically they're about around 10 days long. And as I said, the next one is coming up mid-July, and it's going to be in the mountains of northern Greece in an area called Epirus, which is not well traveled by tourists, has some of the most amazing scenery you'll ever see. And these mountain villages, they're all made out of stone, and they, traditionally they've been quite isolated. And so when you're there, it's like some magical experience. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Wow. And the dates on that trip?
Yeah, so the next one is July 18th to the 28th. And as I said, travelsbynature.com is the website, and that has the dates, it has the itinerary, it has the prices. And I partnered with a travel agency called Paragon Travel, so everything is kind of bundled in except your international air. But I mean, we have a bus and a driver access to get to, if the festival is in another village, you need to get there. Your accommodations, your meals, and we eat the traditional diet that's given to you. So it's a whole encompassing experience. I tried to keep it affordable for everybody. This is not a big money maker for me. This is me sharing my passion, my knowledge of Greek culture. I mean, I speak enough of the language. I've taught the dances for quite a few years. So it's just sharing my passion.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. Here in Spain, my other business is actually a luxury, active, and cultural travel business. So we have some
No, I
commonality
know
there.
there's some commonalities there.
Yes, very
We
much
should
so.
talk.
But I love what you're doing with that. In fact, that's one of my focuses for this year. Is I want to try to merge what we're doing with Metabolic Motivation and what we're
Yes.
doing with Magical Spain, and offers. We do have some crossover, but I want to do a little more of that. And
Right.
so yeah, we should definitely stay in touch about that as well.
I don't see a lot of people, Dan, that connect there's a lot of retreats and you do yoga retreats and this and that and go to different countries, but there's very few people that connect it with the culture, with the local culture. And so that's what I'm trying to do is get a real cultural experience, immerse you with the locals as opposed to the plastic wrap tourist experience that most people get when they go to these countries. And then, as I said, what ancient health secrets can we uncover? What can these grandmothers teach us about living a healthy lifestyle? So when you go to Icaria, you learn things. You learn, my God, their diet. I mean, they eat a lot of wild greens. There's probably
Yes.
like a hundred varieties of wild greens that grow in the mountains, and they pick them. That means they're active, and or if
And
the
mobility.
men are,
There's the
and
mobility
mobility.
part.
That's right. They own goats. The goats have to be herded. That's like 4 or 5 hours of activity every single day, and it's a mountainous terrain. Some of those villages had no road access up until probably the 70s or 80s, so you walked everywhere. So that was a considerable amount of activity. And even the very old people there today, they still walk. They don't drive cars. They walk everywhere because they're not in a rush.
Yes.
They're not stressed about anything. They're not going to look at their wristwatch. They don't have a smartphone. They're not trying to track every activity they do on their Jawbone or their Fitbit. They don't care. There was a woman there. She was an hour and a half late for her own wedding, and the priest hadn't even shown up yet because it's just not it's not urgent, right? So they're so relaxed.
Oh, that's great.
Sometimes as a Westerner, it can be a little frustrating when you're trying to get business done or do anything there. And, I have a friend of mine that she's been building a house there, it seems like, for 15 years. And it takes forever because the workers don't show up.
Yeah.
And the reason the workers don't show up is, well, they say there was a panigiri, that means festival.
Yes.
We couldn't come. Or the day before, well, we had to prepare the lamb for the panigiri, right? That's a logical reason. Or there was a baptism. And to them, you can't, this is their priority. They prioritize that over, working and slaving away. And it helps build this real sense of community. Their community there is so strong, which is, I believe, another reason why they live so long. You look at all these factors. It's not just diet. It's a sense of belonging. It's moving every day. It's spending time outside, not seeking comfort all the time. I said it was the coldest day we've experienced here yet in Toronto, but it doesn't mean I can't go outside for 15 minutes. I should go outside for 15 minutes. We cocoon ourselves up too much. So these people spend a lot of time outdoors. They eat copious amounts of olive oil. Amounts that I would think is ridiculous. You order a village salad there and it seems to come with a cup of olive oil, but it's whereas here we're putting it in little teaspoons.
Little teenies, yes, tiny, or even spray bottles.
Yeah,
That
spray
I've seen on
bottles.
occasion.
Yeah,
Not in
exactly.
Spain, but in the States.
Right. Yeah. In the States, you see it. In Canada, too. It's kind of sad. So you take all these factors together. They even drink a little wine every day.
Sure.
And the old people will say, well, this is the reason why we live so long. Well, maybe not, but it contains good quantities of resveratrol, right? Lots of anti-inflammatories and antioxidants. And the wine isn't sprayed. They don't export it to all these different places. It's from their own garden.
Right.
Just like the vegetables, it's from their own garden. The olives are there. There's no mass slaughterhouse on the island. Everyone is responsible for their own animals. So when they do eat meat, it's really the highest quality. So, The message is we can't all move to a Greek island, unfortunately. People deal with their lives and the stresses of their lives, and we have families and we have corporate jobs and 9 to 5, which sometimes seems to stretch into 9 to 9 because people are so overworked and overstressed. But I tell people, you don't have to be so black and white about it. Start small. That's why I say one habit at a time. Get outside 15 minutes. Disconnect. Don't even have a purpose when you go outside. Go for a walk. You don't even have to have a destination. Just go for a walk, an absolute purposeless walk. It's going to be good for your health. If you don't have time to go to a gym and spend an hour and a half, don't. But get out of your seat and do 10 squats. There, you're doing something. Do 10 push-ups. I don't care what it is. Just move, right? Run, climb a tree, have fun, de-stress. These are really important messages because, and I see it especially, it frustrates me this time of year because it's New Year's and people get resolutions and they think it's, oh man, I'm going to go 100% and I'm going to do this insanity workout or this P90X or this something. And because they equate utterly exhausting themselves and lying in a pool of sweat with getting fit. And that's not what the people in these little Greek islands are doing.
No,
they think you're crazy.
Nor in Spanish villages or Italian villages either.
No, I'm not saying they don't have their problems. They have their issues too. Like, they smoke more than they should and all that stuff. So I'm not painting an ideal picture, but there's little messages that we can take. It's not necessarily all or nothing.
Right, and that's a great point. There's a lot of that in Western culture, that all or nothing, and that goes right into the more is better cognitive bias.
Right.
It fits, and it makes it easy to sell this whole, the idea that it's all, if you need to get in shape, all you need to do, as Einstein said, you should make everything as simple as possible, but not too simple, and that's what I think we've done. And, with the health and fitness industry in the past, and I'm happy to say we're coming out of it for people
right.
like you and I and many thousands more, we're telling people the truth of what actually works. But
right.
There's so much of that, more is better. And that's like, for example, people thinking, it's all about exercising more and eating less. And, and that works for a few
right.
weeks. And then you start to get the injuries, the inflammation, et cetera. And then people quit.
Right.
And
the older that you get, the smarter you have to train yourself too. Like, as I said, I'm almost 56 years old. I need my recovery time. I'm not 20 years old anymore, right? I need to train smartly. As I said, I prioritize mobility. I do body weight stuff. I do strength train. I'm actually starting a few gymnastics things now, which is incredible to me. Like, who starts gymnastics in their mid-50s? And I'm not saying I'm good at it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to do what I can. You
Sure.
see what progressions you get. I just try and incorporate all of the foundations of movement because, as you know, it's about movement. It's not about muscles. It's about movement. So, pulling movements, pushing movements, squatting movements, hip hinging movements. So I'm thinking, deadlifting, things like that, or even swinging a kettlebell, locomotion movements. So that could be walking, running, crawling, again, not losing contact with the floor, trying to combine all of those things. And, if you only got a couple of minutes, you do a couple of minutes. You do what you can. It doesn't have to be black and white.
By all means. Wow, this is Greg. This is wonderful, wonderful messages for people out there, and I think we could. I feel like we've got a lot of symphony, and we could go on for another hour, but we're running up on time, and
okay.
So we may have to do a part 2 in the future.
That'd be awesome. I'd love to.
Yeah, this would be great. So
we could delve more deeply into one of these topics.
Yes, by all means. And also want to mention to people, you've got a beautiful website there at gregcarver.com, and
thank you.
I guess that's and you've got a wonderful free offer for some information to right there on your home page. So as a final thought, Greg, what's one last bit of wisdom that you've learned that you would, if you could talk to yourself 20 years, the Greg Carver from 1985, what would you say to Greg Carver from 1985?
I would tell Greg Carver of 1985 to learn to be a little more comfortable with getting uncomfortable and to move. To not seek comfort all the time, but just to get outside and move. It's so important for your health. It's so important for your longevity. It's a very simple message, but we're here sitting glued to our computer screens, and it's compelling to stay seated here and not get up and break the pattern and do stuff. But that's all you have to do. Don't obsess, just move.
I love the message, and love what you're doing. Congratulations again for all your work, and
thank you, man.
And I really would suggest anyone in your area check out gregcarver.com. And
yeah, and if they're in the Toronto area, they can check out Strength Box. If you Google it, you'll find us. And in terms of the trips to Greece, you can find it through gregcarver.com. But as I said, there's also that website travelsbynature.com.
Travelsbynature.com. Wonderful.
Correct.
So and that's open to anyone in the world, I suppose.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and no real stringent fitness requirements. As long as you're mobile, you're good, and you have a flexible attitude. That's the most important thing. Then that's what we're looking for.
Wonderful, fantastic, Greg. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and we'll definitely stay in touch on this, and
cool.
Let you know when we get this up. We've got kind of a backlog of interviews to get processed. So we'll let you know as soon as we get this up. It'll be on YouTube, and then we're going to be launching on iTunes in February.
Fantastic, man. I've had a ball.
Hey, me too. Me too. I love what you're doing, and it's given me a charge of motivation to get my fitness travel kind of union there bridged. You know, and
right.
Get something out there. We've got a page on our travel site for a paleo trip. But we've not really developed that or promoted that as of yet.
Right.
But, one step at a time.
Yeah. Good stuff, man.
Hey, thank you again, and we'll be stay in contact. And look, who knows? We may see you in Greece sometime.
Oh, that would be amazing. That would be amazing. All right,
wonderful.
Dan.
Thanks so much, Greg. Take care, man.
Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.